Hello everyone, I hope you all are doing well. So today we'll be covering the chapter of education. So let's begin. Okay, so now we'll be beginning with the chapter education. So first of all, there is the formal curriculum. Formal curriculum is anything and everything that is being taught to you, that is a part of your syllabus, that is a part of your course. For example, the syllabus that is being taught for each subject in your school is a part of your formal curriculum. For example, the content that you're being taught for sociology, the chapters that you're reading, that you're learning, the concepts that you are analyzing are all a part of the formal curriculum because they're part of the syllabus. Next of all, we have informal curriculum. Informal curriculum is anything and everything that is being taught outside the classroom. For example, you being taken to a trip in Pakistan to explore all the historical sites of Pakistan, or just to narrow it down, for example, you're going to a trip in Lahore to explore the historical sites. For example, we have Wazir Khan Mosque, or we have the Badshahi Mosque. So, for example, your teacher is telling you these are the monuments that were built during the time of the Mughals, or the Mughals built them. So you're gaining some sort of historical knowledge about. You're gaining some sort of knowledge about the historical monuments of Pakistan. So this is being taught outside the classroom. That is not part of your syllabus. It's something that you are learning by visiting. And lastly, there is hidden curriculum. Hidden curriculum there is hidden curriculum. Hidden curriculum are the attitudes and behaviors that are taught through the way the school is run and how teachers act. For example, teacher enters in, for example, schools in Pakistan, you see teachers enter in, they say either Assalamu alaikum or they say good morning. This is something that is being taught to you unconsciously. You meet your friends, or you meet your parents, or you meet other family members and you greet them. You say Assalamu alaikum. So that is something that you have learned through unconsciously, through how your teachers act. Or for example, your school instills in you the values of punctuality, or to stay spick and span. Your uniform must be ironed properly. You must be clean. Your hair must be tied properly. So these are all a part of your hidden curriculum, something that is being taught to you unconsciously, something that you are being taught unconsciously, subconsciously, something that is being instilled in you, or becomes a part of your identity unconsciously or subconsciously. You're not being actively taught. This is something that is indirectly being taught. Okay, so now we will be moving on to the different types of schools. Okay, so firstly we have faith schools. Faith schools are schools that are controlled by religious organizations. Students are a member of school's faith. They have their own distinctive ethos based on their faith. For example, so in Pakistan, we have a large student body that goes to the madrasa. Over there, they learn about their religion, they read the Quran, and side by side, they also study basic subjects that other students study in private or in public schools. And similarly, this would be true for the UK, where there are specific faith schools where people learn the teachings of Christianity, and then they also study other subjects such as English, math, science. Okay, so one thing I want to make clear: we're not studying different types of schools generally, but we can apply it to our own context, to our own home country. But specifically, we are exploring the different types of schools in the UK, or how these different types of schools were changed, how we moved from comprehensive system, how they moved from comprehensive systems to grammar schools, technical schools, or secondary modern schools. Right? We have comprehensive schools. Comprehensive schools are non-selective secondary schools who accept all the children in the area for providing primary education. So in comprehensive schools, anybody there was no discrimination based on the academic ability or on gender, ethnicity. People from any they were, as I'm saying, they were non-selective secondary schools who would accept children in the area for providing primary education, who would accept all children. They would accept all children. There would be no discrimination. And I'm telling you, we're specifically exploring the trajectory of schools that were present in the UK. So in England and Wales, comprehensive schools were introduced from 1960s onwards, and after 1960s, because the comprehensive school system was not so good, and children were not learning so efficiently. And then after 1960s, the comprehensive school system was replaced with three other types of secondary schools known as the tripartite system. So in tripartite system, we have the grammar. So the grammar schools, they taught classics, mathematics, sciences, and other demanding subjects for GCSE. Then we have technical schools. Technical schools were mainly like vocational training centers where you went and you learned a number of skills. For example, you learned carpentry, driving, cooking, embroidery, or how to operate a difficult machine in a factory. So they were basically instilling skills in the pupils. And then we have secondary modern schools. Secondary modern schools offered basic education for children who could not afford to take tests, who did not have the opportunity, who did not have the resources to take tests. So they were being offered basic education by secondary modern schools. After the comprehensive system, we saw other school systems also emerging. So one of them was specialist schools. Specialist schools are secondary schools that specialize in one or more subjects such as sports, arts, business, and science. So they may be specialized in science, or they may be specialized in art or business. So this depends on the school. And then we have academies. Academies became education system whereby they were being sponsored either by the government or by private sponsors who would then provide education to students. And then lastly, we have free schools. Free schools are like charities who do not charge students with tuition fee because they are being funded either by parents, by teachers, by private organizations, or by the government, and they may be sponsored by all of them. So the end goal was to provide free education to children who could not afford education. Okay, so now moving on to another idea of this topic, which is how does the education system serve as an agency of socialization? So you see that education is a secondary agency of socialization. And why is this? This is because children learn not only what is being taught in lessons, but also the social expectations and, for example, how to get on with other children who often have different backgrounds or abilities. So this socialization is being carried out outside your home. You're learning social expectations, you're learning how to get along with different people, you're learning to compromise, you're learning to explore people, you're learning to interact with people who may not be similar to you, who do not have similar backgrounds as you, who do not have similar interests as you. So you're trying to get along with them, and you're learning how to behave differently when you are with a different cohort of people. So how does the education system operate, and how does it socialize you? So it's through the practice of social control. How is social control practiced? Social control is any way in which people are persuaded or forced to behave in particular ways. How do schools impose social control on the students, or how do schools socially control pupils? It's through the practice of sanctions. So how is this practiced? How is social control carried out? Social control can be carried out through the practice of sanctions. Okay, so if I say, for example, I'll give you a number of examples so you can get a better understanding of what is formal negative sanction or informal negative sanction. So, for example, if a child is being reprimanded, they're being scolded for going late to school, then that is a informal negative sanction. But if a child is being fined, if a child is being told to stay after school if they go to school late, then that is a part of the formal negative sanction, right? That is something that is written in the school code, that you have to pay a certain fine, or your break is cancelled. So that becomes a part of the formal written negative sanction. Okay, and then we have positives, and then we have a system of rewards. So first we had a system of sanctions, They are the punishments, they are mostly negative, and then there is a system of rewards that is being that is awarded to you based on your performance. For example, in most schools we have a student body that is being selected, we have a student council that is selected from the rest of the student body based on the skills or based on the performance that they have in schools. They're given certain sashes or badges. There is a ceremony held for them, so that is a part of the formal positive. That is something that you are rewarded for. So this is how social control is practiced. For example, a student may be motivated to get into the student council, and they may work very hard, and they may not indulge in fights in school, or they will focus on the lecture content. So this is how indirectly, subconsciously, social control is practiced. Or for example, at the end of the year, students are rewarded with certain subject awards for the performance that they have had. For example, they may be getting all A's throughout the year, and at the end year ceremony, the students with all A's in particular subject are given certain rewards. A ceremony is held for them, and that becomes a part of formal reward system. This is how social control is practiced. Or social control in a positive way can also be practiced when you give a correct answer in class, and the teacher appreciates you, and they recognize you. Well done, very good. That is a part of the informal rewards. Right? So this is not something that is given to you, that's just spoken to you verbally, or the teacher smiles at you, or the teacher verbally speaks at you. These something that is verbally or facially expressed becomes a part of informal reward system. And moving on, like we discussed, that yes, education is an agency of socialization, but according to Marxist, functionalist, or feminist, there are other functions that are also played by the education system. Yes, it controls you socially through the system of rewards and punishments, but there are other types of functions that the education system also plays. So according to functionalists, education has several functions, such as schools pass on the norms and values of a society from one generation to the next, since they continue the process of socialization that begins in the family. Secondly, since children are socialized into a shared set of values, education can help them believe that they belong to a shared value system, and can particularly be important for societies that are ethnically diverse. And how maybe these individuals socialized into a shared set of values or beliefs, it's through certain practices. For example, you have these assemblies where you sing the national anthem collectively, you see your national flag, you have this flag rising ceremony. It's not carried out in all schools, but in most schools it's carried out, where your national flag is hoisted. When you're having these assemblies, you learn patriotic slogans. You learn these, some of them you also learn these religious slogans like Rabbi Zidni Ilma, or patriotic slogans like Pakistan Zindabad. So saying these slogans all together binds you to a collective group, and being taught in lessons about their society, about their history, about what was their historical trajectory. All these things contribute to a shared identity. And secondly, according to functionalists, a very important function of the education system is, and why was the education system set up, was because of this function, because it basically passed on the literate and numerative skills into the individual, so that they can be a part of the workforce in the near future. For example, you want to work as an engineer, you want to work as a doctor, you want to work as a manager. So there are certain literate skills, there are certain analytical and critical skills that the education system instills in you, so that you can be a part of the workforce, or your specific field of interest, or your specific area of interest that you want to work in. So according to Marxists, schools are basically indoctrinating the elite class values into pupils, and they do not believe in the idea of meritocracy. They believe that students who come from elite class backgrounds are more advantaged because of their home environment, because they have more resources, and also because the school believes in passing on these elite class values. So they believe in the idea, so they believe in the so they believe that the education implements the correspondence principle. Now, what does correspondence principle mean? It means that the education system is correspondent to the workplace environment. Just like the workplace environment wants its employees to be obedient and to be punctual and to always and to never say no to them and always accept what's being said to them or what task is being allocated to them. The similarly is true for the education system, because the education system also values these same principles. So they value punctuality, they value obedience, the education system. And as students, we are not allowed to question which curriculum we are being taught or what type of content we are taught. So they basically training these future workers for the capitalist system. So they say that the education system is actually subjugating the individual, the working class individual, more and more, and indoctrinating them that they will end up for the capitalists. Okay, and lastly, according to feminists, so feminists see a division between two sexes. Feminists argue that schools, like other secondary agencies of socialization, now what were the other secondary agencies of socialization? There is religion, there is media, and then there is now education. Send the message to boys and girls that boys are superior and girls may learn to lower their expectations and be more likely to accept the traditional gender roles. Now, what were the traditional gender roles? It was that girls are the ones who are going to stay at home, cook, clean, wash dishes. So they're going to play the role of a housewife, and the father or the husband is going to go out and earn. So these are the traditional roles. The breadwinner role is associated with the boy, and the housewife role is associated with the girl. So according to feminists, the schools are perpetuating these traditional roles. So division between boys and girls may also be carried out in schools. For example, they are encouraged to take different subjects, or boys may be given preferential treatment over girls, or they may be called out as being more intelligent than girls because they are boys. And why does this happen? So like I said, that teachers may have higher expectations of boys and encourage them to aim for a career, while assuming that future for most of the girls is marriage and motherhood. And like we discussed, that there can also be an absence of role models. So up till now, we have seen some progress that women are being a part of the top tier, that they are having high positions in different workplace sectors, but we still need more improvement. So why are girls being discriminated? Why are girls not being seen as more intelligent? Or why is this traditional gender stereotypical attitude being carried out? It's also because in schools the senior staff and head teachers are often males, which give the impression that men are better suited for leadership roles. So this has an indirect or as unconscious effect on girls, that yes, we always have to work under boys or under the males, and it's the way that it is. Okay, so now we'll be exploring how is education being influenced by a number of factors, and for that we will be exploring three factors. One is material, second is cultural, and third is linguistic. And what's their effect on a person's class, gender, or their ethnic background? So let me make this first clear, that whenever you enter a school, why have we picked and chosen only class, gender, and ethnicity? Because they are a prominent part of your identity. You go to a certain school, you are cognizant of the fact that you belong to a certain class, or you're cognizant of the fact that you are from a certain gender. You're male, female, you are a trans, and you're also cognizant of the fact that what's your ethnicity. So this becomes a very prominent part of your identity. and your identity is being influenced by other factors too. So we'll be exploring those factors which affect your educational achievement. Firstly, we have material influences. So why is that the people from the upper class background tend to achieve more than people who are from a working class background? It's because belonging to a certain class, the upper class students have the resources, they have the opportunities, they have the financial resources, I'd say, to basically afford academies or to afford resource books to help them with their school achievements. And also the homely environment. They also have a very peaceful homely environment, a spacious homely environment where they can study for the exams quietly, peacefully, and then they tend to overachieve, or they comparatively tend to achieve more than the students who come from working class backgrounds. However, on the other hand, we need to explore the disadvantages of pupils who come from working class backgrounds. And for material influences, let me make this clear. For material influences, we're only looking at the financial position of a student, the income that the parents earn. So how are they materially disadvantaged? So in material disadvantages of a working class people includes, why do they underachieve? It's because they have small home, crowded, and no place where they can quietly study. They have inadequate diet. They are unable to afford extras such as sporting kits or school uniforms. So they cannot go to these extra co-curricular activities where they can through this informal education. Like I said before, they cannot even attend preschool because they do not have enough money. So basically they skip the preschool part, or they become a part of the homeschooling which is not being carried out properly, and then they enter directly enrolled in a class for which they do not have a firm base to cope up. They have, like I said, they have fewer resources at home, like school educational books, access to computer. They have part-time jobs due to which they cannot take out time for their study, or their parents cannot afford university education, means that children have lower ambitions to begin with. So all these material factors influence a student's educational achievement, and due to all of these factors, they tend to underachieve in schools. They do not tend to perform well. And then we have ethnic factors. So people who come from marginalized ethnicities, who are part of the marginalized ethnicities, for example, in the UK or in the USA, we have Afro-Americans, we have Pakistani pupils, we have Bangladeshi pupils. So they are the ones who do not have this highly influential status, or they are not very rich. There are immigrants who are from relatively poor background, and this disadvantage continues in the new country. The factors that are outlined for the disadvantages that pupils from lower working class backgrounds have, the similar is also true for pupils who come from poor ethnic backgrounds, because they do not have money to have all these education resources, or they may also do not have a very spacious home, or they may also not attend preschools because they have a limited amount of money. And then there is gender. You see, the material deprivation is related more to social class and ethnicity than to gender. However, when a family has limited resources to spend on education, girls' education may be seen as less important than a boy, which is why families with limited budget educate sons rather than their daughters. So, if your family has a limited budget, then the preference would be given to a boy rather than a girl, so the girl would be materially disadvantaged to perform or to even get education. Okay, so moving on to a second factor that is influencing all these other social factors: class, gender, ethnicity, or /race. We have cultural factors. I'll only be exploring the groups that are being disadvantaged, who cannot perform well in the education system, or groups whose educational achievement is compromised. So for social class, we'll be looking at working class pupils. For gender, we'll be looking at females, for ethnicity, we'll be only looking at the Afro-Caribbeans, or the Bangladeshi, or Pakistani pupils, or the Latinos those groups whose educational achievement is compromised. So then you can make easy comparison. Why is their education compromised to pupils who have an advantage? So for social class, why are working class pupils not achieving more? What are the cultural deprivation or the cultural influences that are affecting their achievement? So working class peoples have a culture or subculture that is different from the rest of the society. Cultural deprivation comes from the values, the attitudes, rather than a lack of money and resources. So firstly, we explored the money part. Now we're looking at the attitudes or the behaviors that is being portrayed, that is being carried out, the attitudes or beliefs that the student learns inside their home. So let us first explore the factors that stand in the way of a pupil from a working class background, which is why they cannot achieve more. It's because of a fatalistic attitude, that is not believing that you are in control of your own destiny. So in home they believe that yes, because I am a son or a daughter of a laborer, I'll end up being a laborer. So that's a fatalistic attitude. Or you have a fatalistic attitude, for example, that I'll not improve my own conditions, they're going to stay the way they are. And then another factor that influences that negatively influences their educational achievement is the need for immediate rather than deferred gratification, which is why working class children work for an immediate wage rather than going to school, which helps them in the future but not in the present. So they may leave their education, they may enter into low paid jobs and start doing that, and that's part of the immediate gratification. So immediately gratifying yourself, immediately satisfying yourself for a low paid job, and you're not pursuing education which is going to reap you out more benefits in future. That's a part of the deferred gratification, which is going to be more rewarding. So immediate gratification is less rewarding and deferred gratification is more rewarding. And then we on cultural influences from a people coming from working class background is parents may not be valuing education results. Parents may not give much importance to education. They may not talk to the children about what's going on in school, how is your result, what do you want to be when you grow up. All these factors are going to influence a child, where the child may think that yeah, education is not so important for us. And lastly, there is a factor that there can be or there is an absence of successful role models in the family who benefited from education, which makes children see education as unimportant, right? Now we're moving on to gender. How are culturally girls disadvantaged to perform well in schools? What are the attitudes, what are the behaviors that they see which makes them believe that yes, education is not so important for me, or I'll just get away with that. So girls may be influenced to see their future in terms of marriage and motherhood rather than a profession and a career. So may also be told, or they may be influenced by the factors in the family. For example, in future there's no need that you need to earn, it's the boy's responsibility or your husband's responsibility to earn. So they may be unmotivated to work hard or choose a profession. How are people from poor ethnic backgrounds culturally deprived? The similar is true for social class that are discussed. What are some of the factors? The immediate gratification, the fatalistic attitude, the absence of role models. This can also be applied to people, the Afro-Caribbeans or the Hispanics or the Latinos, Bangladeshi, Pakistani pupils who come from these backgrounds. All these factors may also influence people from all these to underachieve in schools. The opposite can also be true. For example, if you have there's a positive side too. Why are people from a specific ethnic group achieving more? It's also due to the socialization that is being carried out in school. For example, working hard at school was an essential part of Chinese ethnic identity. Children were socialized into seeing education success as very important. Chinese children were told to be their best, while white British children were told to do their best. So something that is being instilled in you, that you have to be your best, you have to give your best shot in school, and education is end and be all for you, and that motivates the child to achieve more. Okay, lastly, we have linguistic influences, and I believe they're one of the most important influences that a person from a specific class, gender, or ethnic background has on them. And for that, we'll be exploring two types of language codes. One is the restricted code and the other is the elaborate code. So restricted code language is something that is that you use in your informal everyday spoken communication with your family and friends, whereas elaborate code is used in formal occasions that make meanings explicit to express complex and abstract ideas. So generally the distinction is made that you use elaborate codes for that is more formalized, that is more structured, that is more proficient. You use them in schools in order to achieve more, and restricted codes are a part of your informal setting that you use with your family and friends, that is informal, that is not so explicit, that is not so structured, and that is a part of that is something that is being used outside the school. And how are linguistically people from working class backgrounds deprived? It's because they're not so much proficient in the elaborate codes. They cannot write so well. They cannot structure their essay, for example, properly, or they are not so explicit in their ideas, so they cannot communicate their ideas properly, which is why they tend to underachieve. So people from poor working class backgrounds do not have enough resources or do not have enough exposure to be much more proficient in the elaborate code that is required in schools. Okay, so firstly we'll be discussing tied to the idea of linguistic influence, we will be discussing the idea of self-fulfilling prophecy. And you see that if a working class individual is not so proficient in the elaborated codes, he cannot write so properly, or they cannot communicate themselves in exams or in school tests, then the teachers label them as being slow in learning, or they cannot perform well, or they are not so hardworking. So teachers may attach different labels to that student. It's very simple. It's like you say somebody is more intelligent and the other person is less intelligent. So the teacher is putting up a label. For example, student A, they're saying student A is more intelligent, student B is less intelligent. And the self-fulfilling prophecy is when student B accepts that label, when student B really believes that yes, I'm not so intelligent because my teacher says I'm not so intelligent. So they're basically fulfilling the label that has been attached on them. Right? So there are many pupils who come from working class backgrounds and who are given these negative labels by teachers, and they basically accept those labels. So what they're actually doing is that they're fulfilling that prophecy onto them, and they're accepting that yes, I am not intelligent because my teacher says so. Yeah, and yes, I'm not. But on the other hand, there are also people who come from working class backgrounds, and they may be called as yes, are you not intelligent if the teacher says to them, and they may be like, no, the teacher is not, the teacher is wrong. I am intelligent. It's just that I'm not particularly intelligent in maths or in science, or I need to learn more, or I'm still learning. So they may not accept that label, and this is what we call self-negating prophecy. The prophecy that has been attached to you, you negate the prophecy and you say no, I am intelligent, and you start working hard. And the consequences of self-fulfilling prophecy are very bad, because the person it gets trapped into that inferiority complex because they consider themselves to be less intelligent, and they keep on fulfilling that prophecy. So whenever they want to achieve more, or whenever they're working hard, that prophecy comes into becomes a hindrance for them for future. So teachers need to be cognizant of the fact while putting up labels on students, and they shouldn't put labels on students. Somebody is more intelligent or less intelligent, because everybody is learning at their own pace, right? And then for the similar reasons, if a student is less intelligent, and if a student is not so good in elaborated codes, then the teacher is going to stream that student. Now what does streaming mean? Streaming is when pupils are segregated, or a hierarchy is formed where there are top streams and bottom streams. So the students who are not performing well, they are placed into bottom streams. And what do sociologists say? They say that because the working class individual does not have enough resources, they're material deprived, culturally deprived, and also linguistically deprived, they end up being a part of the bottom stream. They say that those who are put in top streams will become more confident and do well, while the opposite is true for students who are put in bottom streams. In most cases, the higher the social class, the higher the stream. Streaming happens for the entire class. So with students with of your same ability, with your students with this with a similar ability are streamed into a different section or a different stream. So if you want to understand it more clearly, we'll call it section. For example, there is a D section where there are students who are not performing so well, so they're part of the bottom stream. And there is a A stream or a A section where students are very bright and they're performing very well and they're more intelligent and they're hard and they are the teacher and then their teacher's favorites, so they are part of section A or the top stream. But setting you, a student is part of the lowest set based on a particular subject. For example, you may not be good at math, so you'll be placed at a lower set, right? It's not for all subjects, it's only for that particular subject in which you're not performing well, right? So the possibility is that the pupil may be top in English, so pupil may be placed in a top set in English but in a bottom set at maths. So setting also is a practice of discrimination where you basically create a binary between the more intelligent or less intelligent or people who are not working hard, and this tends to shatter a person's morale that they can work hard. And how does ethnicity come into play? So due to the linguistic deprivation and due to this self-fulfilling prophecy, the Afro-Caribbeans or the Bangladeshi or the Pakistani students may be seen as deviant, they may be seen as not working hard, so they end up being a part of bottom streams or bottom sets, right? Because they're ethnically seen as not so hardworking or deviant, or they may be seen as less intelligent. So here you see ethnicity interplays with the linguistic deprivation, due to which the individual ends up being a part of these discriminatory practices such as setting, streaming, labeling, self-fulfilling prophecy. And how does gender come into play? How are people discriminated, or what leads? Why do girls mainly underachieve? It's because individuality or creativity is praised in boys while girls are praised on their appearance and good behavior. So what you were inculcating is very different. So the girls are going to take in that what's important for me is my appearance and not my grades, right? And why do girls again underachieve? It's because lower level teaching is dominated by females and higher level by males, and female teachers are missing from science subjects. The outcome of this may be that girls do not believe that science and technology are subjects for them to choose and pursue a career in these fields. However, we see that in the recent decade, girls are achieving more. And why are boys underachieving? Why are girls doing better than boys in the GCSE level? It's because the attitude and motivation of girls has increased since there are more successful women as role models. Schools make an effort to ensure that girls get the same opportunity as boys. And then there is girls spend more time in studying and are better organized. Girls also seem to benefit from the continuous assessment than boys. Like I said, in the recent decade, there is an improvement where girls are achieving more, where girls are improving, where girls are being a part of the sectors that were mainly labeled as sectors that were mainly dominated by boys, or they were deemed to be fit for boys. For example, you see law, you see science, you see astronomy, you see engineering, you see programming. So there are throngs of girls who are entering into these fields with each passing year. And why do boys underachieve compared to girls? Is because teachers consider boys to generally behave badly, and boys are sent out of classrooms more than girls. So they're rowdy, they're more carefree than girls. So basically they're missing out on the lectures because they're misbehaving, and which is why they're underachieving. And secondly, boys tend to be overconfident, they overestimate their ability and believe that they can do well without working hard. And thirdly, there is laddish behavior. So boys may belong to or be affected by an anti-learning subculture. They may think that they will lose status in the eyes of their peers if they work hard to do well. So for example, if they want to be cool, or if they want to be happy-go-lucky, then they are not going to study, because then they're going to lose their image in front of their peers. So there is a peer influence as well. So they may be called as nerds, as geeks, or as somebody who's always into their books. So they do not want to lose their status in front of their peers as well. So they'll show this laddish behavior that I'm so cool and I don't study. Okay, so now we'll be seeing what are some of the influences of the peer group and pupil subculture on the educational achievement. And for this, again, we'll be exploring these three important factors, that is class, ethnicity, and gender. So why do pupils who come from working class backgrounds are influenced by these peer subcultures, and why do they underachieve? What are some of the reasons why do these pupil subcultures or anti-school subcultures start at the first place? What's the trigger moment? What triggers them? So so the reason is that schools place a high value on behavior and grades. One of the effects of labeling is to divide students into those who highly achieve and those who underachieve, which is why those who are labeled as failures are deprived of the status. And we have also discussed that those pupils who are a part of the lower streams who are labeled negatively are the ones who are working class individuals. So in response, you see that because of these discriminatory practices, in response, pupils rebel against the school and develop an anti-school subculture developed in an attempt to gain respect in the eyes of their peers. And what do these subcultures popularize, or what do they believe? They basically hate schools, they avoid work, they do cheating, they despise pupils who work hard. And which is why, because of this subculture, because they want to stay connected to their pupils, because they want to stay united to their group, to that philosophy that yes, we're going to rebel against the system because the system is unfair, leaves them at a disadvantage, which is why they do not perform well in school. And for ethnicity, the similar is also true, that pupils from Afro-Caribbean or the Pakistani or the Bangladeshi are the ones who are labeled as failures, and they're placed into these lower streams and sets. And because they are placed in lower streams and sets, they may also form a subculture or an anti-subculture group against the school based on their ethnic identity, and they may rebel against the system. So similarly, like the working class individuals who are not achieving high, they're also not going to achieve high, because they're rebelling against the same system that is going to benefit them. And based on genders, girls can also form their peer groups. They can also be a part of specific group. For example, girls can form a group where each one of them encourages the other person to improve or work hard. Or they may also form a group where they do not value education, they are more concerned about their appearances, or they're discussing celebrities, or they're discussing fashion trends, and they may not be so motivated to work hard. So it can be both ways. It depends on how your peer groups influence you. So we're seeing the influence of peer groups. So if in a peer group, if a girl is a part of a peer group where they're working hard, then they're going to obviously achieve more. But if they're part of a peer group, a girl is a part of a peer group where they're not so vested in education, then this is obviously going to take a toll on their educational performance. Okay, so lastly, now we're going to explore the difference between the official curriculum and the hidden curriculum. So the official curriculum consists of subjects taught and their content. In primary schools, the focus is given to reading and writing, and followed by specialized teachers for subjects in secondary schools, and usually only one subject in university. Okay, so like we've covered the official curriculum. Official curriculum is something that is being taught to you, that is a part of your syllabus. However, on the other hand, what is hidden curriculum? Hidden curriculum are the attitudes, they are the norms, they are the values that the individual or the student learns from their school experiences. And what are some of the features of the hidden curriculum? You see that there are competitive sports and testing individuals. So you see that there are extra co-curricular activities, extra co-curricular competitions that test the individual, that allocate you different positions for a second, third, and they are part of your hidden curriculum, in building in you, or they are instilling in you the idea that you need to be competitive, or you need to achieve more and more out of your own hard work. And then hidden curriculum also includes the importance of punctuality that is being taught. Like I earlier said, if you're late to school, there are many schools who fine you. There is a fine, or they stop your break, or it's written that you have to stay after school for like an hour or half an hour. That's your punishment. So the virtue of punctuality is also being instilled through the hidden curriculum. And lastly, unconsciously, you're also following the authority that is in command. For example, your teachers, your coordinators, you're following them, you're following their orders. So you're also being told that you need to be obedient, and you need to actively follow their orders. Okay, so lastly, we'll be looking at how are we measuring intelligence, and the question is, can intelligence be measured? So how are we defining intelligence? Because this is a big problem in sociology or in any other field that tries to explore intelligence, that how are we understanding intelligence? So is intelligence just that in the mainstream you understand that intelligence is when you are good at English, or you're good at maths, or when you perform well in your IQ test? And there are different critiques about this idea, that there may be people who may be there are students who may perform academically well, and they may get good scores in their IQ, but the opposite is also true, that there are people who may not perform very well in the IQ test, but they are intelligent in other things. So they may be emotionally intelligent. So what do I mean by being emotionally intelligent? It's just that they understand other person's problems better, or they know how to tackle a situation that cannot be tackled by anyone else. It's a very complicated emotional situation. Or they are good at listening others, or understanding their problems, or just sympathizing with them, empathizing with them. That's also a form of intelligence. Now that's one problem with that. How do you define intelligence? And the other problem is, how do you measure intelligence? So for the most part, how are you defining intelligence is very problematic, and we are problematizing that. And how are we measuring intelligence? That is through IQ tests only. That also does not speak well, or does not reflect well about somebody being more intelligent or less intelligent. So that's also very deterministic approach, that you say that no, only IQ tests are going to qualify people as being more intelligent or less intelligent, right? There are some of the problems that scholars have highlighted with IQ tests, that intelligence, like I said, that there are multiple types of intelligences, and your intelligence is not something that you inherit. So a lot of scholars have argued that people are just born with brains. So a lot of scholars, and some of the other problems with the IQ test are that intelligence is not something that you inherit. Because if you say that intelligence is something that you inherit, then that becomes a very deterministic approach, and a very essentialist approach in terms of biology, that biology is determining everything and it's just inherited, and environment plays no role. Because and this is absolutely not true, because environment is our surrounding, or our surrounding, or the identities that we are associated with, or the resources that we have are influencing us every day. Which class we belong, what is our gender, our race, our ethnicity, everything matters. So they say that intelligence depends on environment, and you mostly see that that people from higher classes are performing well, or upper middle classes are performing well than working class people. It's because their environment is best suited, or they have the resources, like I said in the while explaining what factors influence educational achievement. It's because they have the resources, they have this natural capital that can help them in their IQ test, or their parents can help them preparing for the IQ test. They do not have to worry about the financial. They do not have financial worries, because they only have to worry about is during the time is about their grades, and that's a privilege for them, so they can perform well in their IQ tests, right? And another thing is that, like I said, the IQ tests are based on a very narrow range of skills and exclude other types of intelligences. That is, they exclude the emotional intelligence, or there is also a thing that a person may be very intelligent in science, but then may not be very intelligent in maths. So you may have discrete kind of intelligences, right? The other thing for which IQ tests are under critique is because IQ tests are made by a particular culture, and those from the same culture do well or they find it easier. So there can be a language barrier, and there can also be a cultural barrier. For example, people who apply for universities, they have almost everybody has to give a entry test. For example, people who are applying for universities and who take the SATs, people from a different culture, for example, if you're applying, for example, if you're applying to a university in Pakistan that requires SAT, so you see that SAT in itself is being designed by the Englishmen, by the English white men, and it's being designed in the UK in English. So there can be a language barrier because English, particularly talking from the context of Pakistan, English is not your first language. So you may face a language barrier and also cultural barrier. In the examples that are provided you, or the reading texts that are assigned to you, that are given to you, going to sit for the exam. So somebody who's giving an SAT in the UK or in the USA, they are very well familiar with the language and also with the text or the examples that are given in the text. And lastly, another factor could be that people maybe intelligence test. I'm saying that intelligence test may not reflect your interest fully, is because one of the factors could be that you're not feeling well, you're not performing well on that particular day because you were ill, or you may not. It's because that you were just ill, and if you had been a bit better, then you would have performed well. So there are certain kind of other factors too that are influencing you. It's not just that, oh, you're not intelligent, that's why you're not performing well. There are other environmental or health factors too that may also influence your performance, right? Okay, so thank you so much for listening, and this brings me to the end of this chapter's crash course. I hope you will find this helpful, and if you do find it helpful, then please do comment down below, and also don't forget to subscribe because this gives me a lot of motivation to continue with these crash course series. And please do let me know if you find it helpful or not. Thank you.